face, pretty tempting, but pretty taught me all the.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Archie Tech Experiment. We are here with Amari Sayas, a trauma-informed life coach. We're going to bring her in now and get familiar with her. Yay! Hey, Amari, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. You are actually our first female guest.
Yay!
Oh, yeah, that's cool. And also, it's two reasons to celebrate. One, first female guest, and two, I actually have 100 days in recovery today.
Oh my God,
100 days
really?
clean time. Yeah. So that's awesome.
Congrats.
So yeah, it's pretty cool. So could you tell us what exactly is a trauma-informed spiritual life and breathwork coach? That is a lot.
Yeah. So I'll go into like the spiritual and the breathwork part, and then the trauma part is kind of separate, but I'll touch on it in a second. So basically what I do is I help people and I guide them to open up their spiritual side, get closer to God, the universe, whatever you want to call it. I'm not necessarily like religious in a sense, but really my goal is to, well, initially it's really to get back with one. And for me, one is getting in touch with God. So it's one and the same. And so it's really about like finding yourself. And the breathwork part it's kind of the bigger, larger part of getting in touch with yourself, because so many of us don't actually feel any of our feelings. We don't know what it feels like to have pain in the body or where we feel happy or any of those things. So when you use something like breathwork, which is something that we can all do, you really actually tap into the powers within your body that you didn't even know that you had. So that is like the long and short, I guess you could say.
Okay. When you say breathwork, is that you mean like meditation?
So meditation, if you want to look at like spirituality on a really like large scale, meditation is a section of or a way in which you can gain access to God, the universe, your highest self, whatever you want to call it. That is one form of like attuning to this highest self. The other side is something called contemplation, which is similar to meditation, but it's actually you are like thinking on this one thing, and then the other is prayer. So each of these things can be used in its own way to get you closer to, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, God. Let's just stick with that. So any of one of those forms of practice that you use will get you there, but breath work is more so it's an activity. It's something that you have to like actually participate in. It's not something that is passive. So obviously we breathe every single day, but breathwork itself is very intentional. It is for certain periods of time. It's a certain type of breath pattern that is actually going to, basically the idea is it overpasses that brain activity that a lot of people get when they're doing meditation. So if you sit for like 15, 20 minutes, the first probably like 7 to 18 is your mind talking to itself. And you have all this like mental chatter, and then you find this like peace and bliss within the last like 35 seconds. So what breath work does is it bypasses that like mental chatter and it goes right into this bliss state. And so you can actually put yourself into these like higher states of being very, very quickly just by using your breath.
Wow, that is amazing. That's amazing. And also I wanted to touch on, because I came across a piece of writing that you wrote called Be an Agent of Changing Your Life. And that was awesome for me. I really enjoyed reading it. And I wanted to know what inspired you to write it.
Yeah. I'm always inspired. I write a lot. I don't necessarily always share it with people, but some of the things that I do want to share are things that I think are helpful for other people who are maybe looking to make a change in their life, or even just are in this place where they kind of like know they want something different, but they don't know what it is or how to get there or what it looks like. and really just realizing that it only takes like the choice. And then once you make that decision, full body, like not just your mind, but if you actually feel that within your body, the universe and all of these things around you will start to put those puzzles into place. And so, yeah, it's really just my, I guess, focus right now is awareness, is getting people aware of the capabilities that their mind, their body, and their soul have in order to create change in their life. We are all capable of anything and everything that we would like to do. It's just a matter of choice. And so that's really kind of, I guess, the inspiration as to why I'm in this place myself, I guess, where I am consistently changing almost like every day. And so I'm inspired by myself. It's really egotistical, but it's super true.
No, that actually does make sense. I think that the work you do is very powerful, and I really have a lot of respect for it. And you seem so passionate about it, and you're inspiring so many people. What makes you so passionate about what you do?
I don't know. It's something that I was like born with.
That does make sense to me, actually.
Yeah. I mean, ever since I was a kid, I'm going to say this again, it's going to sound egotistical, but I knew that I had the ability to change the world. I'm not saying that I will, or that it's going to be me alone, but I always knew that that was something that I was capable of. And as I grew up and I leaned into that idea, what I also realized is that so is everybody else, right? Like we are all fully capable of literally anything and everything. And that is how I've moved my entire life. Even when I was like fucking up, it was still this sense of like, even this is going to help me move into the next chapter of my life, no matter if it's something that I probably shouldn't have been doing. That still created lessons in my life. And so it's, I guess, just also taking the experiences that I've been through and seeing the beauty in them has also created a lot of passion in me. I've been through shit just like everybody else. Like, you know, some have it worse than others, but I will say I've been through my own fair share of shit. And so knowing that on the other side of that experience is something that I can use. It's a tool, it's a resource for me to like be better and also help others be better. That's what drives me kind of on a daily basis.
That makes sense. I think people overestimate the idea of changing the world. I think that it starts with even just only touching one person. And it seems like you're doing a great job of that. I wanted to kind of talk about mental health. I know last month was mental health awareness month. We're a little bit late, but if you could just give some of the viewers some tips on maintaining mental health, because I think that that's important. I talk about mental health a lot. I'm in therapy. I just started. I had my second session yesterday, and it really, really helps. I would recommend it to any and everyone.
So true. Yeah. And I feel like the journey of mental health is so individual and it's so personalized that even if I can give you a tip, I also always ask and encourage people to look within themselves and find those answers for themselves, because at times we're always looking for somebody outside of us to answer our questions and find truth within our lives. And it's like, we actually all have those truths and those answers within us. And so one, I would start with a lot of self-inflection, a lot of self-reflection. I talk to myself all the time. It's weird, but it's true. And it helps because I also have this ability to like process outside of myself. Like when you're dealing with something, it's very difficult to process and move through the entire experience if it is contained within you, even in just like your own mind. If you were to even just talk it out loud and no one has to be there, it will allow you to move through the experience a little bit easier and a little bit better. And so part of the reason why I do breath work, and I think it's so important, is because we don't allow ourselves to feel our feelings. And so many things are trapped inside of our body. That is scientific. You can look that up. There's research to be had. When you have an emotion and it is not experienced in its full self, it stays trapped in some part of your body. And so that's what creates disease and all of these other ailments that a lot of people have. And so I so encourage and I recommend people to really allow themselves to fully experience what they're going through, even if it's painful. And if it is so painful where it becomes overwhelming, that's when you go and you look for support and you ask, outside of yourself, like, okay, now this is too much. How can I get help from somebody else? But I always start with the self, because if we continue to tune outside of ourselves, we then create this disconnect. And so you don't actually know what you're feeling. Like, you could be sad or you could just be anxious about a situation. Like, you don't know until you feel it.
Also, I'm always careful, even not to cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
I'm always careful, especially when I'm talking to like a therapist, not to have my moods influenced by outside forces.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I take suggestions, but I pretty much just do what I want. And I make sure that what I'm feeling is what I'm feeling, and not because of, someone's insisting that this is how I should feel, or I am feeling this way. So
yeah. I mean, I don't appreciate, nor do I allow for people to impose their feelings onto me, nor do I allow them to dictate or like try to say what I'm feeling. I am the one that gets to decide what that is. And the only thing that I expect from somebody else is to do that for themselves as well. Like, I don't actually expect anyone to hold my hand or coddle my feelings because I feel a certain way, right? Like, I'm in control of my feelings and also how I react to those feelings. Just like you are, right? So if I'm upset, I don't expect you to do anything about that. That's my feeling. I have to be the one to decide what I'm going to do with that feeling. And so if you are doing something to me that's upsetting, of course I can tell you, hey, like, that doesn't feel that good, but I can't hold you accountable for your actions because those are yours. I don't have any say or dictation over what you do. I can only do that for myself. And so there's also this, I guess, in like the terms of like mental health and how to keep yourself a little bit safe, is like have this level of like disconnect between emotions and other people, and not to say like stop caring, but also you don't have to attach yourself to every emotion. You don't have to attach yourself to every like word somebody says to you, every time somebody hurts your feelings. You don't have to sit in that forever. Let it hurt and then let it go. Like, if you have a feeling for more than, I think it's like 90 seconds, it's no longer an actual like physiological feeling. It's now you continuing to play that moment over and over and over in your mind. And you are now creating this ill feeling within you. That moment has passed. It's your kind of like own brain disposition that is keeping you in that cycle of like whatever it is.
And what advice would you give to someone? Because that, I think, is that first initial step, which is the hardest, because it takes a lot of courage, I think, to look inside yourself and kind of like, analyze yourself and analyze those feelings. What advice would you give somebody to take that first initial step to where they're saying like, all right, it's not the outside world. Maybe it's something going on inside of me. That's the problem.
Yeah. And I'll say this because I think this was a lesson I learned. It can be both. It's not one or the other. There can be both things outside of yourself that are affecting you and things within you that are creating those effects. So
but you can only control one, right?
Well, yes and no, in a sense. You cannot control your environment in a sense of like, I cannot tell you how to act, but what I can do is get you out of my life. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I do have control. I want to say this lightly, but I'm going to say it anyways. I have control of most to all of my life, right? Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of moving the pieces around to benefit me in a way. And so with what you're saying is like, yes, of course, you cannot change the person around you. Like, for example, a lot of people have problems with their parents. We cannot change who our parents are. They are pretty much exactly as they will be until the day that they die, unless God's miracle comes down and, they change for themselves. What you can do, though, is change your approach to the situation. So when there is something that is said that you don't like, you don't have to feed into it. Like, you let it hurt you. Maybe if you want to take a second to write about it. I like to journal. That's the kind of person I am. I always have one with me. Yes, my sweet love.
Yeah, that's a cute dog.
Boy, he's not mine, but I love him anyways. Yeah, so I would say, as lame as this sounds, journaling is one of the things I encourage everyone to do. And I know it sounds really lame, but it's so helpful. It's really helps people find words for the feelings that they don't know how to get through. And over time, you'll start to be able to articulate more what you're feeling as you do this process. Like today, you're going to be like, I'm just mad. Tomorrow, it's like, oh, actually, what I'm really feeling is overwhelmed. And then you get into that. And then eventually you're like, you know what? Actually, it's none of that. It's this feeling of unworthiness that I've created for myself, going back to things from my past. And so as you or whomever starts to dig into those layers, it'll just get deeper and deeper and easier. But I would just start with asking yourself questions. I'm super inquisitive and I'm curious about myself and others. And so I like to ask questions like, why is that so? That's a great question to start with. Why? Why is that so? Why am I feeling this way? Why did that affect me in that way? Why did that person hurt my feelings and not somebody else? Why is a really great tool, in my opinion, as far as questions, to get you deeper into, some of those things that you wouldn't uncover unless you did the digging.
Understood. You recently called for the word trigger to be dismantled. And that spoke to me for a couple different reasons, primarily because in recovery, that word gets tossed around a lot.
It does.
And I've always it never really sat well with me. And because I've never really liked the idea of something outside of me predicting my behavior.
Thank you.
You know what I'm saying? It's especially instantly, maybe influencing lightly, but not predicting to where if you see this, you're going to act like this. I don't like that. So I don't really do groups, but to anyone that is in recovery, if that's working for you, I don't denounce it. But for me, that's not my thing. I don't do groups. And that's just one of the things that part of the curriculum of recovery groups that doesn't really align with me. Yeah. But with that being said, I do know that in order for me to maintain the path that I'm on, I have to stay away from certain people, places, and things. Mm-hmm. The way that I differentiate it is that there's a difference between triggers and temptation. Would you agree? And if not, kind of touch on that a little bit?
I do. I think they probably fall into similar categories. When, at least this is my assumption, because I really don't personally like to use the word either. Like you said, I think it is very demonstrative of cause and effect. This happens and immediately there is this effect. And I don't think that that's necessarily true, because if you were listening to what I said, I think it takes the choice away, that moment of pause where there is something that happens to you and then you get to decide what to do about it, right?
Absolutely.
That word takes that ability to choose away. But I think if we were to just talk about triggers and temptations, I think a temptation can be a trigger for some people. And not all, but temptation is also not I say this not lightly, but temptation, in my opinion, isn't something that we can shy away from. It's always going to exist in our life, right? And if we pretend like it doesn't, it increases its pull on us, right? And so in order to kind of like move past those things, I think absolutely the very first steps is like, don't go around them. You know what I mean? Like that is obvious. It's so obvious, but for some people that's not possible. Like, for example, if I could just give you something else that a lot of people have an addiction to, food. Yeah. People are addicted to food. You cannot stop eating. So if you tell someone, if you are triggered by food, don't eat it. Oh, great. Like that's so, you know what I mean? Like, how can we actually move past it in a place that makes sense? So temptations, I think, have to be dealt with in very specific ways. And part of, I guess, what I do on a personal level, but also sort of like what I teach people is how to like move through those situations where when you get in the face of it, you have that pause, that ability to make that decision for yourself in that moment. And then once you decide, you have to remove the guilt, really, truly at the end of the day, because that guilt is the thing that holds you back from making better decisions later. Because I know for myself, when I felt guilty, I just continued to do even worse stuff. You know what I mean? Like I was like, well, what does it matter now? You know? So there's also this, like, again, that attachment, it's detaching yourself from everything, as awful as that sounds. You really, I try to not have attachment to anything. I can love and I can care and I can like put my heart on my sleeve for most everything. And also, if that thing doesn't go in accordance to my plan, or if that person no longer vibes with me, I'm fully free and capable to just let it go and not feel like I'm guilty of or doing something against that. It just is what it is because that's what is good for me in that moment. And I so encourage people to like find that first. What feels good for you? What, if you were to like picture success and happiness, what does that look like for you? Can you paint that picture? Can you write it down? Like, do you actually know what that looks like, what that feels like?
And painting the picture is kind of the first step in manifesting it into reality.
100%. And the thing is, people stop there. They paint a picture and then they're like, I'm done. It's like, that's not it. That's step one. Mm-hmm. Now that you have a picture and you know what that looks like, now you have to build backwards on how to attain that goal and figure out the steps that are going to get you there. And not only that, like also taking assessment. Is that really what I want for myself? Is that really making me happy? Like, you could be doing, let's say, like this for 3 months, and then you look back and you're like, this is not for me. If you were to keep doing that and not take assessment, by the end of the year, you would be hating your life. You know what I mean? Even though it's not like something that is detrimental to you, because it's not in alignment with what you want to do, it is actually harmful. And it does actually create a lot of angst, and at the end of the day, will create disease in you. So it's so important to like align yourself with what you really want, like you personally, like you have to find that for yourself and define that first, in my opinion, before you start taking action anywhere else in your life.
I think that intent plays a big role in that. You have to intend to kind of start on that path to doing what you enjoy doing. Can you kind of explain intentional living for us?
Yeah. Intentional living, it starts with knowing what you want. And once you have had that agreement of like, this is the life that I want to have, this is what it looks like, every decision that you make, every move that you make in your life is going to agree with that intention. And so, like you were saying, like intention is so important. There was this, I read a lot and I study a lot. And there was this study of plants, and this guy had 2 of the same exact plants. He treated them with the same water and all of these things. And one of the plants he would speak really kindly to, and he would tell it that he loved it and all of this stuff. And the other plant, he would like swear at it and do all like say kind of like derogatory and mean things to it. And at the end of the study, what he actually found was that the plant that he was swearing at grew more. Right. Okay. And so you're thinking, why? That doesn't make any sense.
I thought we were going in a whole different direction with that.
Yeah. I know. That's the caveat. So the funny part was that the plant that he was swearing at, he actually felt more towards that plant. He got excited when he was talking to it. Like it was something about like this playfulness that he was having about saying like, hey, fuck you. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't in an actual cruel tone. He was having fun. He actually really liked and enjoyed having that interaction with that plant.
He was kind of an asshole pretty much.
But he did it with intention. His intention wasn't to actually be mean to the plant. His intention, if you kind of picked up on, like, he enjoyed it. Like it was something that he found like was a connection to the plant. And so there was actually a higher vibration, so to speak, than the one that he was saying, like, I love you too, because he didn't have that actual feeling there. There wasn't energy in those words that he was saying to the other plant. So what I mean by that is you can say something out loud, but if your like inner self, if your full body doesn't actually agree with that statement, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? If I tell you that I hate you, but in my heart, it's actually love, that's what's going to come out is love. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's the intent behind the words, because words are pretty much just things that we agreed on to make sense, you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
But so where could people find you? Because you give such great advice. Like this felt like a therapy session to me. I feel fixed.
My goodness, you're so
I feel like I'm fixed. Where could people like reach out to you? Because I know that you love helping people, and it's kind of what you do. Where could people find you?
You can find me. I actually just deleted my Facebook, so not on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. That's kind of only where I hang out right now. I do have a website that I am creating that I'll definitely give you a link to, so you can check it out for yourself and send some people. And I'm also I'm kind of in a bunch of random places.
Like
but
Medium.
my
I found
name
you on
is,
Medium. I didn't even know what Medium was.
yeah, Medium is like it's kind of like where you can just write and it's obviously unpublished, but it's almost like an online journal kind of thing.
Yeah.
But people also use it to like write news and things like that. So it's almost like, what's that other website? WordPress?
Never heard of it.
You've never heard of WordPress. Yeah. So they're just like places where you can write stuff for free, basically. So yeah, if you just like pull up my name, I'm the only human with this name in the planet. And so
seems like it.
You will find me no matter what. But all of my, I guess, like information is there. If you go on my Instagram, my link tree will actually direct you to like physically get in touch with me. Like you can schedule a call. And I give basically like complimentary calls to anyone that's just looking to kind of get some clarity on their next move, where they want to go in life. And yeah, how to get there. That's kind of what I like to do, is get people to sort of figure out what their goal is, and then we create the plan to get there.
That is awesome. That is awesome. That's very good. Well, we kind of running out of time for today. I'm gonna end here. Unfortunately, this was like honestly my favorite. This was my favorite interview to do. So hopefully you'll come back on, especially after you get your website up and running, and come talk to us, and we'll figure that out. I definitely want to have you back on soon. It was a wonderful having you on. This was great. I'm gonna put you in the waiting room. Is there anything else that you want to say to the viewers before you go?
The only thing, because I think I didn't do it enough, and I did want to mention. So really quickly, when I say things like trauma informed or speak about trauma, it's not necessarily that I work specifically with people who have had trauma. Really, the idea behind trauma informed and any sort of work that says trauma informed is that my job and my purpose is not to re-traumatize people. So a lot of therapy, in my opinion, I've been to therapy myself, both talk therapy, group therapy, and I've done a long line of it. In my experience, they seem to bring you into the place in which trauma existed, right? They open these cans of worms and then they send you home without any tools to actually help you deal with this worm explosion that has literally just laid on your lap. And so my purpose is to first and foremost create safety and security in people. And that's where my sort of like trauma-informed work comes from, is because when you are in a trauma state, it's because you didn't feel safe. You were in danger and you didn't feel safe. And it's my most important role is to create safety first, so that if something does come up that might be painful for you, you don't feel like it's traumatic. You can actually move through that experience and complete it so that you can move through it. And so that's kind of just like the one thing I wanted to say. When we talk about trauma, we don't want to bring them back into trauma. We want to create safety so that that experience is no longer traumatic.
Wow, that's amazing. And something for me to think about too, because you raised a couple good points there. Therapy sucks. Screw therapy, call Amari.
It's good and it's bad and it's not for everybody. And it's
I do recommend therapy. But you did raise some good points, but I do recommend therapy. It does help for me. I think it's more beneficial to me than actual groups and things like that.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, I bid you good luck, and I'm so proud of you. 100 days is amazing.
I appreciate that. I'm trying. I'm working on it.
Don't try, just do.
I'm gonna do it. I'm doing it. It's happening. It is happening now. Cool. Nice talking to you, Omari. You're such a wonderful, beautiful person.
Thanks. Appreciate you.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Till next time.
Till next time. There will be a next time.
Okay. Bye.
All right. That was Amari Sayez, the trauma-informed, spiritual, and life and breathwork coach. Next week, I have live from the Rise of Independence. Chilla Jones is going to be with us. It's going to be a great battle and then a great interview with Chilla Jones after that. So tune in next week. We are here. We are doing this. As always, love each other, be kind to each other, and take care of each other out there. I love y'all.